not the new guy anymore.
Okay, all ready.
Okay, the following meeting, let me get the official notice out here. Agenda, okay. Following is the agenda for the regular meeting of the Pompton Lakes Planning Board. The meeting is held Tuesday, December 17, 2024, beginning at 7:30 PM. Formal written advance notice, as required by NJSA 10:4-1 et sec, has been provided of this meeting at least 48 hours in advance of today, given the time, date, and location, and to the extent known at the time, the agenda of this meeting. Such notice stated that formal action may or may not be taken. This meeting will be video recorded and would be broadcast for later viewing for the public. The notice was posted on the bulletin board outside the offices of the municipal clerk, reserved for this and other similar announcements. Provided to the Suburban Trends, the newspaper designated by the council and planning board to receive these notices, and filed with the borough clerk. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, Mr. Mayor, you have an obligation of an oath of office, sir.
I will do that. Sean, why don't you stay? So Sean, I should just let the board know that Sean, when he was in high school, was the mayor. Just so you all know.
For you or for Katie?
For me. Raise your right hand. Okay, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Sean Bootsma,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey.
I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the same
to the same
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States
in the United States
and in this state.
and in this state.
Under the authority of the people,
Under the authority of the people,
I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties of
perform all the duties of
Planning Board Alternate Number 1 Member
Planning Board Alternate Number 1 Member
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome aboard.
May we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
And for the first time, including Mr. Bootsma.
Yep. So, Mr. Simone,
Here.
Mr. Fracaro,
Here.
Mr. Trost,
Here.
Mr. Brian Odo will be absent this evening. Dr. Pendexter will be absent. Mr. John Keating,
Here.
Mayor Mike Sarah, Councilman DeLine will be absent. We have a new member, Sean Bootsma,
Here.
okay, and Mr. Bowlby.
Here.
Thank you.
We have Andy Brewer, and there are no engineers or planners tonight, this evening.
Okay, the first item is minutes from the October 15th, 2024 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, what is your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve? I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion?
Fracaro and Keating.
No corrections or anything like that? Good, okay. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any absent? Okay. Under correspondence, here's four memos, actually, from Liz, the town clerk, which refer to ordinances from adjacent communities. One of them is from the Borough of Riverdale for commercial indoor recreation. Another one is Borough of Riverdale for affordable housing. And the third one is an ordinance from Oakland referring to Bush Plaza. That's just for reference purposes. Another memo from Ms. Bransness is there's a company called MG2, which is an engineering planning company, and they are being joined to Collier's Engineering, who does the engineering and planning for Pompton Lakes Planning Board. Also have a memo from Michael Corelli, which discusses the fact that there's a request for qualifications for 2025 respondents and that would be professional appointments for our board and many others. We do not take that up until next meeting in January, at which time we will approve our engineer and planner and our attorney. There's also a letter, it's not in the packet, but it was recently received from Collier's Engineering. It's a freshwater wetlands permit, and it has to do with the Dawes Highway Bridge Replacement Project. That will be taking place this year, Mike?
Yeah.
25, I mean?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
They're shooting for it.
So that's going to be a complete disruption in the south end of town for all kinds of reasons, but the bridge needs to be replaced.
Now, they're not widening the channel, correct? They
No,
decided
not
to,
touching it. And we tried to, we went and met with, we brought our expert in, Joe Scoopia, who's a flood management expert. He has told us increasing the width of it will not help with the flow during the flood. That's our own expert telling us that. And the county said we weren't going to indicate any idea at all anyway. We did ask them to lower the site view when you go over, because there's a little bit of a hump in the middle. They said they would try, but they couldn't promise that because it's on building of the bridge if it fits within the specs to make it come down like that. So that's really the only, but they're not widening, no. They gotta put footings in, but that's all they're gonna do.
okay.
We were also trying to get him to remove the center column. There's going to be center on that, right?
There it is. They're still discussing that, if they can do that. They're not sure if they can do that. We also asked them to open the side rails so they're not solid, so water could flow through, if it would flood over. They were going to look at that also.
What's the time frame from start to finish for that, do you know?
A couple of years at least,
Yeah,
right?
it's years, yeah. It's a big project. The footings alone are gonna take some time.
Yeah. And they're not proposing moving the bridge, so, you know, you can't build one adjacent to it and then take the other one down. So they're gonna demolish and then rebuild in essentially the same location, and there's gonna be some revision to the grades around it, the streets around it, but that's it, right?
Well, it's a one-piece bridge after they have the footing, so it'll be dropped in, but the footings, to put the footings in, they're gonna have to tear down the bridge and then drop it in.
And then they have to do all the construction adjacent to it.
Yeah, everything touched.
Yeah. We'll see. Okay. Before we get into the one item we have on the agenda tonight, which is a conceptual hearing, I just want to note, I received a letter from Rich Vaccaro tonight. I am writing to formally resign from my position on the Pompton Lakes Planning Board effective December 31, 2024. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve the community and contribute to the important work of the board. I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with my fellow board members and engage in meaningful projects that have helped shape the future of Pompton Lakes. While I am resigning due to my retirement and relocation, I remain committed to supporting the board's mission in whatever ways I can from outside my official role. I appreciate your trust and support and have thoroughly enjoyed serving on your board. Thank you for your understanding. Please let me know if I can assist with this transition in any way. Sincerely, Rich Vaccaro. On a personal note, I originally started in 1984 on the planning board, and Rich was fairly soon after that on the planning board. And so I have worked with Rich personally for many, many moons, with the exception of the time when I was on the council. So, and even then as a liaison, but Rich has been a very well-experienced and very well-attended representative on this town board. We were blessed to have good people on this board for all the years I've been involved. I always say every year that we've got great people. They are attentive, they are responsible, and they show up, which is the biggest thing. Rich, you have been exemplary of this in the sense that you've been here, you've added substantial contributions to almost every application. You've been here when we needed you. I've used you to talk to different times about projects. You've been a good friend. You've been a mentor to others. I can only say that I will miss you being here. The board will miss you being here. The board is, I'm going to tell you personally, my thank yous to all of the time and dedication you gave us to the board. And for the town of Pompton Lakes, it is better for it that you were here. So I want to wish you all the best in your relocation. I hope we get a chance to communicate once in a while to see how things are going. You come back and visit, come back on the third Tuesday.
I will, thank you so much.
And that would be interesting to have
An
your,
honor and a pleasure, seriously.
but I do want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done for the board.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Another board member, I agree with everything you said.
Yours? Okay, the only item tonight is a conceptual application, a conceptual plan for 98 Wanacue Avenue, Block 2500, Lot 1, Zone DRA2.
It's not.
Nobody's here for that? Are you here for that? So they didn't show up?
He came in today and said that he's gonna be coming in tonight. I told him. I haven't heard from him. I checked my emails.
Well, we can't have a conceptual plan without somebody here, so that's gone.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's the way it is. There are no new applications. Under new unfinished business, we have discussion on the master plan and a budget review. So on those two items, we have a master plan committee, which we will reinstitute again next year, unfortunately without Rich. But we will reinstitute that next year. In the meantime, does the master plan committee have anything they want to bring forward? And if so?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we met on December 3rd. Kristen from Colliers was on a conference call, and then Mr. Trost, Ms. Frisaro, was with us as well. We had the meeting, and basically what we were looking for from Colliers was to say, hey, this is the first time I'm involved in the master plan. Where do we begin? So the direction was, first, Kristen advised, do you think you want a master plan or the re-examination, just like was done in 2017? So that's the first thing that we'll discuss in our meeting. Next, she advised what we should do is break it down into kind of like three areas. One is there's the rezoning map, which obviously from the re-examination from 2017 needs to be updated and to be reviewed to say, is that the plan that you want? I know we, over the last few years, a couple of the applicants that have come before us, you know, they would say, oh, we want to put something here. And I would say, oh, maybe we shouldn't put one there. I said, well, you should have changed the zone before they came here. So we should really review those zonings to make sure that they're what we're, you know, what we want for the future. The next thing is look at the re-examination and look at the recommendations that were in there. Are they still valid? And should they be carried over? Should they be revised, eliminated, and so forth? And then the last thing would be, what are your new recommendations, just like they put in? So that's kind of like the tasks that the committee is going to be looking to accomplish over the next year, and we're going to, you know, continue to meet on a monthly basis and see what progress we can make. And in regards to finances, when we spoke to the borough administrator, he was kind of more in line saying, well, this is 2024, you're talking 2027. I don't see any budget for you in 2025. Now, the only reason why we're looking for some type of budget was so we could get Kristen involved to help us out and stuff. But it looks like Kristen gave us a good direction that we could utilize her, you know, in other ways. So there's going to be no budget for that in 2025, but we're going to continue with our ad hoc committee and continue to give updates.
Okay. Any other comments from board members? From the, we have a committee for the master plan committee?
No, we covered everything.
Okay.
Can I just add that there is discussion with Kristen, because she's gonna be examining some of the redevelopment plan also. That maybe some of that will coordinate with what you guys are doing. So there might be some opportunity to use her in this upcoming year. We're still discussing that, it hasn't really approached us yet, but we know that these kind of boards will work together on a lot of things they're doing. So we know we're gonna revisit the plan for redevelopment, which kind of overtails what you guys are gonna do too. You'll have a much more larger say later on when you're doing all your stuff, but I think there'll be some room for you to have her come to some meetings, or you attend meetings from redevelopment that they're gonna want planning board insight on also.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Did they give you any idea of how long it would, I mean, I know it's gonna depend on the type that you pick, but did she give you a range of time, for example, that if you do this, you can expect it to take X months, if you do that, it'll be many more months? Did she give you any idea of the time needed?
The example she gave was in 2017. If you look at the adoption date, it was December, and they started it like in January of 17. So usually from the beginning of the year, you'll have it done by the end of the year, and that was the re-examination.
That was a re-examination?
Correct.
And to determine the effect of a full master plan, rather than doing a re-exam, but creating the new one, is there anything that's coming up that we should know about that would warrant going to that route, that you know of?
Meaning development?
Well, what, I mean, there's elements to the master plan, and the elements in the master plan, some need to be updated, some may not be. Did they go over the elements? And
Yeah.
you see how many that you want to have to bring up to date, and which ones have to be changed, which ones don't have to be. But is there anything that you can see coming down the road that would affect that? Like you said, you mentioned redevelopment is going to be worked on next year as well?
So redevelopment, their board, and maybe Andy, you can help me with this in the room, they want to get a little more definition on their zoning,
Yep.
on what it is.
Have some specific requirements and to have some design standards too, so there'll be some uniformity of what things will look like without the board making that decision and enforcing it.
Right. So that's going to be part of the scope of what she's going to do for them. And that's why if it does tie in with you guys, and I know when we discussed this initially, there was talk of having some members from this board, some members from the redevelopment agency, a council person, myself, sitting on that group to kind of work out that structure. And then she was going to, like you guys, put it all together and then present it to both boards. So, but that's going to take time. I mean, I think it's a year, like you said, a year process. And she hasn't started anything yet, so. And we are putting money aside for that, for the redevelopment side.
Okay, so when are you putting money aside for that, for 25 or
I
26?
think it's next year. I think it is next year.
So shouldn't there be money put aside from our perspective too then?
I'd have to find out from Michael, I don't know. I'll ask him tomorrow, I'm not sure.
Okay. Andy, is there anything that would dictate the amount of effort that we have to put in that you would know of so far? In other words, they're looking at, do we do this little project or we do the big project? I'm sure you're not familiar with the full master plan, but what are you seeing in other towns? Is it most towns are going the re-exam route? Or,
Denville did a complete redo, other towns, most of the other ones have been re-exams.
Or are they re-exams 2 times in a row?
Some have.
Because, you know, we have the master plan, which still has the golf course on it and all of that. And in the master plan review from 2017, one of the recommendations is remove the golf course from there. You know, if somebody looks at the master plan but doesn't look at the master plan review document, it could be confusing for them. Now we're gonna have the master plan review document, and a master plan review document number 2.
But if you have it, and the way you'll do it is, when it gets adopted, and I would do this, and it gets adopted as an amendment to that master plan. So not just reviewed, it can be, if you just do a master plan review, it doesn't have, you don't have as many notice things, but if you make it, if you do the exact same process and you say this specifically amends the master plan, then they should be attached, and they should, that one concern should be addressed. I know there's lots of other ones, that one concern can be addressed by specifically amending the master plan.
So just so you know, part of the investigation from redevelopment, back when we put the redevelopment agency in place, the council mayor at that time decided you had a choice to be in the redevelopment zone or not. Some people were nervous, they chose not to be in it. But the problem is now all these places that chose not to be in it are asking to be put in it so they could do some work. And it's costing us money each time we have to investigate to put them in. So the planner is suggesting we put everybody in, and then if they want to be removed, we remove them. We're still not using eminent domain, that's not something we've talked about. The redevelopment agency cannot use eminent domain. But that's where we're going with that, and then what the attorney mentioned to get some design standards, which would come from you guys too, by the way, those design standards. Just a principled way to approach it when you're coming into redevelopment. Maybe setbacks or heights or all those things. So somebody has something to look at before they come to the town to say this is what we're, we don't have that right now. And that was her suggestion to us. That wasn't us looking for it. She overlooked our whole thing and said, we think everything looks good between planning and redevelopment. This is my suggestion to make it better. So that's what we're doing.
Housing element,
That's a big F, but
that's one that's of concern to me. In fact, it's currently undergoing some consideration for change again. Is the housing element something that you guys discussed doing a review? Like, when you talked about doing your review, was it a review of every element, but just not a redo of the whole master
It
plan?
was a review of the entire.
Every single element though, right? So when you find out that after, if you, I mean, if
She
some.
brushed on housing, but because it's in the process, we
It's
can
always
get
in
too
the
deep
process,
into it.
yeah.
And knowing that we're out into 2027 before this is gonna be a final document, you know, a lot can change in 3 years.
I guess what I'm looking for is the amount of work that we will need to do is that's gonna dictate the budget, and the amount of work we need to do won't be known until we've done the review. At some point, though, if you have too many things changing on the review, does it pay at that point to just redo the master plan? I mean, it's not practical to amend every single thing, you know what I mean? So have you found that, for example, if you start changing most of the elements with something or other, does it just pay then to create a new master plan?
Planners are typically the person that does the nitty gritty. I do the adoption and make sure that that's done, but the drafting process is somewhat of an informal thing until you get to, hey, we got a draft one. And typically they bring in attorneys when they have a specific question. So that cost analysis, that's really more, the planners could tell you that. And we used to have, Deb did it, the re-exam, she might be able to divulge, or might, that was years ago.
Right.
But the planner who's done both would probably give you a better estimate on what the cost is, cost comparison to doing a re-exam of most things or just a redo of the master plan.
I guess my concern is to make sure that the money is being spent appropriately and that we don't have a situation where we've gotten so far into the, let's just make some changes and update, where it just becomes easier just to change it. So I don't know when that would be, but I would like to have the committee kind of look into where we should be with respect to how many things are going to change and how they're going to change before we choose this option or this option. And then that's going to determine how much budget's needed.
well, I was about to say, that would be, your committee could talk to Michael about the budget process, because he's gonna know what he can afford to pay to make these things happen. And I don't know the difference between what you're talking about and doing a full change-up. I'm thinking one is more than the other, I'm guessing.
Just, Kristen gave us ballpark, 25,000 for re-examination and 150,000
So that's a
for
big number,
master.
150,000. Now,
And then
that's
just
the route
rough,
we gotta
rough
go.
numbers.
I'm not saying we're not gonna do that, but that's a budgetary question.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm trying to have my cake and eat it here. What I'm trying to do is figure out the best way to spend the money by trying to figure out where we should end up instead of getting, piecemeal here and here to here, and then before you know it, you spent more money than just doing the whole plan. So this is what I would look forward to seeing the committee review with her and with Michael as needed, but he's not really going to be in the process except for the money. So, but I'd like to try to make sure we narrow down the amount of work we need to do without actually doing it all. So it's kind of like, investigate it, you kind of can determine a little bit based on all the experiences we've had, whether the last plan is working properly, where it isn't, where the state has changed things that we now have to incorporate. And I just want to try to make a determination early on that, yes, we're going to be okay going with an update versus no, we're not. So I just would like, because then if it's an update, I honestly, $25,000 in the big picture is not the end of the world.
And that's what.
But the 150 is a lot of money,
And
so.
that's what I was gonna say. Remember, Michael doesn't decide the spending of the money. He'll recommend to us, yes, we can do this, or we can do that, and then the council is gonna vote,
Yep.
should we spend the money?
Yep.
So the 25 is something we probably can squeeze into any year budget. The 150 is a different number. I'm
Right.
not saying we can't, but it's a different number.
Yeah, and that's why the earlier we determine how we want to do this, the easier it'll be to accommodate the expenses, even if it has to stay in 2 years.
Right.
So, okay, so we made progress, that's good. There's a budget review that just kind of goes along with what we just discussed. There's really no major budget for the board. We have small expenses, mostly just for reproduction of certain documents, and salaries are covered, so I don't think there's really any need for a budget review. There are no resolutions. I'm going to open the meeting for the public, if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to any issue that they have. Seeing none? No? Okay, I'll close the public session. Do we all have any comments we want to make about things at the end of the year? Do you want to see anything start changing? Do you want to talk about anything that we've done or going to do? This is a good time to just kind of like freshen up for the year. Rich, I'll give you an opportunity at the end of this to tell us what we should do.
I just have the comment that started in an email, started a couple months ago with questioning Andy on the resolution and the, I guess if you want to call it restrictions we imposed on the building right behind here about, venting dryer vents and range hoods and stuff out the side of the building facing Babcock Place. We were very specific in saying that none of the venting should face Wanacue Avenue or Babcock Place.
Right.
They complied with the front building, but the back building has all the vents facing Babcock Place. When I brought this up, I brought it to Sal, the building inspector. He then responded and copied a bunch of people on it, which we had to stop the conversation. But he said it's built according to the plan. My question is, how does that plan get approved when we placed those conditions on the approval?
I'll give you an answer on that, and then I'd like the board to offer any comments. Babcock Place runs from Wanacue Avenue to the end of where the theater is. That's it. That's it. No, that's it, I checked.
Babcock Place runs from Wanacue Ave to Lakeside Ave.
Does not. How does it get to Lakeside Avenue?
Goes through the parking lot and up.
Yeah, and who owns the parking lot area that's up on Lakeside Avenue? The school.
No.
Yeah, you gotta look at the plans. Babcock Place does not go through the parking lot. That is the municipal pond hole parking lot. So the decision that was made was Babcock Place runs to the extent where we said, to the end of where the stop sign is. Now, I will poll, just unofficially, what the board members think Babcock Place is. When we said Babcock Place, they did do the piece between the stop sign and Wanacue Avenue with the venting units not showing and then going through the roof. The other part, the back building, which is in the pond hole, has ventilation units showing, and that's the part you're objecting to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll ask each person what your opinion of it is. It doesn't matter at this point, because nothing is going to change that. But my understanding is Babcock Place runs from point A to point B. Did anyone here on the board in that discussion expect that this restriction would apply to the pond hole? That's the question that comes down to it. I don't remember anybody saying, oh, and that applies to both buildings. So I don't know where that requirement came from, but does anybody recall?
Well, if you have a map that says Babcock Place goes to Lakeside Avenue, you have the town tax maps that say Babcock Place goes to Lakeside Avenue. And I know for a fact, because I was on the Board of Education, Board of Education's property does not start until the top of that hill. Right behind where the guardrail is at the top of the parking lot, that's the property line.
That's not what the map shows, but
And I will tell you that, we've talked to the building department, it is the building department's call on this, it is not the board's call to do this. He's stating that the plan was followed the way it was supposed to be intended. That's coming from the building department. The other question would be, if you went with what Mr. Prost is saying, what about the back of the building and this side of the parking lot, on our side? It's the same situation. It would be the same thing. Why would you guys approve just one side on Pond Hole where there's a parking lot, and on the other side of the Pond Hole say it's okay to do it that way? You would have done it around the whole building if you were going to say that. That's just my opinion.
there may even be some conflicts in the town mapping, I don't know. But I looked specifically and found out that if you looked at the mapping, one of them shows it going through the parking lot. The other ones show it ends where it ends, and then there's a piece in the Lakeside Avenue part that shows that it's owned by the school. So I'm not sure which map you looked at or I looked at, but the bottom line is, what is the difference, really?
No, but I think the question is, the building department is the one that, Sal, the one that enforces this, make sure there's compliance. I'd like to know, I think, probably that his determination that it was done in compliance with the resolution is based upon his understanding, and I'm not saying on what, his understanding that, as you said, Babcock Place ends at the back of the Colonial Theater, whatever it is now, and then doesn't continue through the Pond Hole. That's the biggest one. What piece of information is he basing that decision on? It's probably, since it's not supposed to be on Babcock Place. That's the restriction. So does he believe that Babcock Place ends there, and why? I think that's the question.
Well, the response I got from him, and I'm not gonna sit here and beat a dead horse, because I've been told, we're not in charge of enforcement, and,
Or not?
But we also placed restrictions on another project that we approved that Mr. Keating understands what I'm talking about, and those restrictions have not been complied with. It's been talked about at this meeting a couple times. I don't know what we can do now to remedy that situation. It's 2 years since it's taken place. Those conditions are still not met. So is there something that can be done in the way of enforcement from somebody else if we make the recommendation to another department to say, hey, go take care of this? The question that I asked on this one is, once we pass a resolution with restrictions, with whatever, who is in charge of making sure that resolution and these plans match?
Building department, that's who does it.
That's it. That's the only person.
Members of it's interesting, members of any interested member of the public can file an action to enforce a resolution. So to the extent that it's not, typically the answer, it's enforcement. It's the same as if the governing body passes that 25 miles an hour around the clock, and those cops are not enforcing it, everybody's going 42 miles an hour. Can't do it. They can't go, they don't, the police officers have discretion. The building department is the police officers in this, in the equivalent. That's what it is. They're forced with, they are tasked with enforcing it, reviewing it, believe that that's what it is. Good, bad, or different. In that context, you don't have the ability to go to court and enforce it. But in this, if an individual, the municipal land use law specifically allows, if an individual believes that a resolution is not being complied with, they have the ability, and it's not cheap and it's not easy, but you can go to court, file an action, and seek to enforce. That's where the action, that's the other enforcement. It's either your enforcing agency, which is, employees and part of the borough, or if someone believes that it's not being done correctly, that's how it can get done. Those are really the two mechanisms.
So why do we even sit here?
So was there another mention of another problem that I'm not aware of, that you mentioned about fire codes? Was that not looked into, or is that something?
Oh, it had nothing to do with fire codes. I mentioned John because it was something that he's brought up several times.
In another project.
No project.
Car wash.
Yeah, so again, the car wash, we suggested they put up trees so that when you're pulling out of Ringwood Ave north, the cars that are checking in to the car wash, the headlights aren't in your eyes. So we recommended put landscape in front of them, and they put them like this high off the ground.
We specifically said 3 feet or higher.
Exactly.
Was that was it written in?
Yes, it was.
So that's something that can be, if it was written in, that's something that can be, in my opinion, that's something that can be.
But not if Sal deems the car wash is finished, complete, according to the plan.
Well, did anybody bring that to Sal's attention?
I think we have several times.
Yeah.
Well, someone should ask him why we didn't follow the plan.
Right.
I would say why didn't we, if that's.
But again,
written
it
in the plan.
came, it's that part of, we're not enforcing. We can question him, but we're not the
But
enforcing.
maybe I'm misunderstanding. You guys wrote it in to a height and a restriction that was actually in writing.
Mm-hmm.
If that wasn't done, like this is a choice of where the road is. There's a distinction of difference.
Mhm.
What you're saying on this is what we said and it wasn't done. So that's a different side of this. I think that's something you could say, well, why wasn't this done? It was in the plan. You can't force it, but you can ask that question.
And that was part of that re-examination that we did too, because they had to come back to the board because they had violations. And I think that requirement for the site
'Cause then we got-
limitation was
we got
in that new
visual
one,
of
in
it.
that second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was part of them complying with the second
Yes,
application.
I don't know, I remember the conversation, I don't know what was said, but all I'm saying, and the attorney can back me, if they actually put specifics in, this has to be 3 feet, 2 feet apart, this high, that is something South can enforce.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think the difference in this one is the expectation of who expected Babcock Place.
No, I think that's different.
I mean, that's the part that's unclear. Yeah,
Likewise, again, going off of the mayor's distinction between what is the plan not being followed and what is an argument of rules, do we have a standardized, and this is just me being ignorant, a standardized, the building department must use this map to determine the zoning? Is that standardized? Is that put into code? Do we know
We
expectations of that?
They might have the practice on what they use. This board doesn't impose that. They don't have the ability to do that. So that would be a question for them. What's their standard practice? Might be a good thing to know.
The only reason I ask is that, again, if we're looking for something that can be legally enforced, we're looking to make negotiations. If we are negotiating off of one map and they're negotiating off of another map, we might be agreeing to something that, we have two completely different definitions. And there might be similar things like that in other, agreements that we've made. And again, this is just coming out of ignorance.
Yeah, I agree.
Excuse me. When this came up last time, I drove over to take a look and see. And I drove down from Wanacue Avenue to the stop sign. And I looked forward and I looked around the parking lot. They've done some work. To me, it appeared that Babcock Place stopped at the stop sign as you suggest. So it didn't seem out of sorts to me. It seemed like they followed the rules and that's where Babcock Place should end. What's the speed limit there? Is that a 25-mile-an-hour road, Babcock Place? I wouldn't recommend people go through that parking lot at 25 miles an hour, to be honest with you, because there's no defined pathway,
Yeah, it might be
roadway
listed, I don't
through.
know.
Yeah. So that was my opinion of where the road ended.
Mr. Chairman, so if the building was not built and the applicant went to the building department and they came to us and they asked us, hey guys, what did you mean by I'll call it the looking at it from Wanacue Ave, the left-hand side of the building. Did you want both buildings or did you just want one? I think the intent was to have both because this side that we're looking at is the back parking lot of the Borough Hall. It's not the public's going to be looking at the building. The other side is for teachers parking. It's really not the public. But now you're going to have the public parking in the parking lot looking at the two buildings.
That was the
You would want uniformity between the two buildings. Wanacue Ave, you don't want those vents showing. So I think if we had a second chance, take the street out. I think that was our language that we used, saying, hey, yeah, along Babcock, let's not put it here. But I think our intent was probably keep the building uniform along Babcock and the parking lot, not have vents, not in the front, and then build it that way. So I think that was the.
That was the
intent.
easiest way to word it,
Yeah.
because, you know.
Right, absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I think pretty much all of us have gone to school here in Pompton Lakes. I do remember going to school in Pompton Lakes when there was a street sign at the top of that hill that said Babcock Place.
So again, I think that was the.
But see, I'm gonna disagree a little bit with that, because you overlooked, you said, well, one side's a parking lot for the town, the other side's a parking lot for the school, the other side's a parking lot for the town. There's nobody living there, they're all parking lots.
Mhm.
You're distinguishing between what's a good parking lot and a bad parking lot. In my opinion, they're all parking lots.
Right.
Yeah, it's true.
True.
I think at this point, there is nothing that really can be done. It's been approved. The cost to redo that would be prohibitive, and I'm sure we'd all end up in court trying to determine what did you mean. And you're gonna end up with opinions that vary as to what I thought, what you thought, what he thought, what she thought. This map versus that map versus, well, I remember back in 1902, something or other. So, with all due respect, I don't think anything's gonna change.
I didn't expect anything to change.
And at this point, the only thing I would caution all of you about, and I know what you said, that it got copied, but at some point, it becomes an issue when it gets to be too many people in the loop. It's okay for a couple people to go back and forth, but we don't want to have,
Quorum.
yeah, you can't have
Then you have, then you have the illegal.
that many people and,
Non-noticed meeting.
right, so,
But, what, and I'm taking the Babcock piece out of this. What Mr. Trost is asking, and I think Mr. Keating too, is if you guys set a plan in place for whatever that plan is,
That's the point.
and you don't feel that it's happening at that moment, there's nothing that stops, I guess, the chairman, I don't know how that works, it's individual or you, goes to the building department and says, I know we can't do anything, but somebody has a question on the thing before it happens, obviously, you know, and say, can you help us explain that? So maybe if someone had said this while they were building it, and they're just getting to that back building, and just said, maybe we need an explanation, maybe there would have been more discussion. I'm still stuck on the car wash thing. You know, it seems like an easy fix, I mean, it's not a difficult fix, in my opinion. So I
Not at all.
don't see why anybody isn't saying, hey, you know, just put a couple trees in the block out the site, it's not a big deal. So we could do that, I guess. I don't know if it's closed.
I don't know if we could do it 2 years later.
Right, I don't know
3 years
once you
later.
sign off on it, if you can go back. Maybe the attorney knows, I don't know.
And the reason I pointed to John, John brought it up before the car wash was even opened. And we've been talking about it ever since, every once in a while, not every meeting, but every once in a while he brings it up. We've talked about it since before the car wash opened. And the
Yeah, I
car
mean,
wash was allowed
that's
to
something you
open.
could have had a conversation, I think, just to get an explanation of, you know, what you were asking for. And look, everything's not black and white when you guys figure out something, right? There's gray area in everything we're gonna do, but maybe a yes or a no. I mean, I don't even think the cars would have been against it, to be honest. I don't think they're gonna fight you on it. I know they say, oh, no, putting a plant, that's too much money. You know, I think it was just a miscommunication, maybe, at the best of that.
Okay.
I think we just have to understand the legal procedure for what the board does and
Yeah.
doesn't do, and I think as long as we take our guidance from our attorney as to where our power, we only have power up to the point where it's approved. And then, just for your benefit too, once we come up with a approval of the project, it's followed by a resolution. Once the resolution is approved by the planning board, then the plans get changed or whatever, and they get sent over to the engineer for review, and if he says it's okay, I can sign them, he signs them, meaning the engineer, the secretary signs them, and then they go to the building department. And when the building department gets them, whatever it says on those plans and in that resolution, it's his responsibility to see that it's done. So if, in this case, if the plans showed windows this big, and they put in windows this big, we have the right, he has the right to say, no, you can't do that. So, I don't know what happens when you get to problems that he doesn't catch, that's another issue. So,
My only other question is, again, I understand that the planning board has very limited scope of what we can do and what we can't, but in the event that there are things that maybe fall through the cracks, then who has that authority in order to, you know, maybe amend that? I'll use the example of the trees. The trees might be something that, the car wash agrees to, we all agree is, the right thing to do, and it might be a very easy fix to work with them, but that might not be initiated by us. Who can that be initiated by?
That's an informal request that would typically go from the inspector, from Sal. Sal would say, you're supposed to be doing it. That's something that's not written in the law. We, the board, can't change it. So it is really like setting the speed limit. It's set, that gets enforced, they could eventually change it. That's actually, we have less power than that. Set the rules, we're a passive board. We can only do things that come to us. We can't affirmatively do things unless you find out that someone lied and you gave an approval based on fraudulent testimony. Apart from that, there's almost no way that the board can affirmatively act. Things have to come to it. But informally talking to Sal, that's how towns work. That's neither provided for, it's not prohibited, that's just how things work. So yeah, it's just a call, hey, I think you missed it. There's supposed to be trees, there's supposed to be, 6-inch calipers, whatever, and then they weren't. That's an informal thing if it's done.
And I think somebody asked who's the checking on Sal. The engineer signs off that the project was done correctly. We all know that. So the engineer is the last one to look at the project. That's who put the wall issue we had with the farms. They wouldn't sign off on the wall because it wasn't done correctly. Well, it was Sal who brought it to their attention, but it's the engineer's responsibility to make sure it's done correctly, because they're the professional in that. And
Lane is
Chairman, I don't know, is the engineer working, when you give your plans, he signs off on it, he goes back and follows up on it, doesn't he? I think.
Yeah, they should have outside review of that, right?
And currently, the engineer and Sal are working, and they are strictly holding Lane Pro Print Graphics, that was the Board of Adjustment one, that down by the water. They are holding their feet to the fire. They're trying to jump a bit. They want to have storage and things, and they still have a few more compliance issues. So on many that they do, maybe these, I'm not sure why these two are an issue or fell through the cracks or didn't. I don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but I know oftentimes there are, and the wall. Sal has found the wall, shut them down because that caused a lot of issues. So.
That's been over a year now. Are they doing anything like that?
Yeah, they've come back with plans and they've been told what they have to do and they've worked out an arrangement. It took them 7 years to get where they are, so I expect another 5 years and they'll come.
Is that,
Well, we had the same problem with the car wash too. Remember, we had to stop them?
Yeah,
Sal didn't stop them.
because of the vacuum.
We came up and said, you can't put those improvements out there, and got led to an amended site plan and, a whole lot of changes.
So you're saying that, so I remember that when they had come back. You're saying that's when the other question was with the lights. It wasn't in the first one, it was in the second.
Like the
I
outdoor
don't
vacuum
remember.
thing too, like the
Yeah.
outdoor vacuum system.
Yeah, the octopus, as I call it. If they would have made it look pretty, somebody
Yep.
might have missed it, but when you make it look ugly, it's like.
Yeah, exactly.
And so consequently,
Yep, all right.
I think we've kind of killed that one. Is everybody,
I'm fine, like I said, I didn't expect anything to change. I just kind of want the clarification as to, once we pass a resolution with or without restrictions, how do we make sure that the plan is approved according to what we passed? Once we
question-
pass it, we just have to accept that it's gonna be done across the hall?
Yes, that's actually, you're presuming that you have the enforcement power, you don't. That's exactly correct. Because that's how it's set up. Planning board decides what can be done, end of story. That's your involvement. Making sure that it gets done is not your oversight or involvement, or it's just not. You're past the board. They come to you for decisions, not for implementation or enforcement. That's not in your.
So we could do a resolution with 10 restrictions imposed, and if they want to approve it with 2 of those restrictions, and they do, then
It's not, the board does not have the authority to oversee that and to stop things. You're not the enforcement agency.
Okay,
That's absolutely
I
correct.
understand that, but again, if we say do these 10, and across the hall, they say, no, we'll get it done with those 2, what happens to the other 8?
You don't get done.
or they go to court?
And if somebody on this board complains, or,
Oh, they can, it's just, we said, you can informally talk to Sal, but no, this board does not have the jurisdiction. That's not how the municipal land use law was set up, just not.
You could talk to him and he would have to agree. You could say, oh, Sal, by the way, did you see that they only did 2 of the 10? And then he says, oh, yeah, geez, he can then, like what happened with the wall, because the wall on Hamburg Turnpike, he went back there and just shut them down, because they did something that they weren't supposed to do. And then they had to come back here to get an amended site plan, they had to revise a whole lot of stuff, and then now he's responsible to enforce the changes.
Okay.
So, you know, he can do it, and one of us could tell him, hey, by the way, did you see that?
Contact
that's
is
it.
absolutely, yes, but the board can't act to force it, to fire him, to take it into their own hands. No, the power doesn't exist.
We can't get it
municipal
back
land use
here.
law is set up that the decisions get made here, enforcement is another place. You just don't have that. That just has never existed.
We cannot get it back here in any official capacity. That's simple.
And so again, this is a question for my understanding, just because I don't really understand, I'm pretty new here. Then in future facing, what power do we have? What could we do to make sure something like this doesn't
He just
happen?
said absolutely nothing.
That's
So you might as well not show up.
But see, that's a presumption, you're creating in your head a situation where you do have that authority. You don't. The municipal land use law was not set up that way. Just as I said, the governing body that sets a speed limit of 25 doesn't have the power to go out and write tickets to somebody that is driving 47 miles an hour. You don't, even if it's not being followed. And I know it's that much of an example. One body in our government sets the rules and makes decisions. Another body enforces. That's just how it is. The governing body doesn't write tickets. They don't go out there and enforce the laws. The police do. Here, this board has limited authority. It's a passive body. It only can act when things come to it. It doesn't have ticket writing or enforcement or other powers. Just that's not how this government works. That's not how the government's set
And
up.
that, by the way, that's not just this town.
Oh, yes, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's municipal
State
law,
law.
state
Yeah.
law. That's boards don't have enforcement authority. That just doesn't exist.
I'm asking even in an informal capacity, like,
Calling up
okay,
Sal
you
and
can
saying,
go to them and talk to them.
going over to the building department and say, hey, why aren't you doing these other 5? Absolutely, that happens all the time. Calls get made, absolutely.
And let me just say, that's how the wall started. The residents above said, we believe this is not correct, and they called Sal, and Sal went and took a look, and
Yep.
that's where it started, the whole conversation.
Yep.
And sometimes people build things without telling Sal
Like
that
pools,
they're building it too. So,
pools and decks.
I guess the real point that I was trying to make, or trying to get an answer to, which you kind of, you answered according to the law, not really the answer, or an answer that I was looking for. If we give Sal 10 conditions, and Sal signs off on the plan, but the plan only includes 5 of them, someone at that point right there is at fault.
You could say someone didn't do their what they were supposed to do in enforcement. I don't know where something might have happened. Don't know. That's a hypothetical. I'm not talking about anything specific. But when the board, the resolution is the zoning. They're not supposed to get, and the way we write the conditions, there are, there are conditions pre-construction and then some operational conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Those pre-ones, yes, there's not supposed to be a CO until there's resolution compliance. Yes.
but ultimately, it's a court decision. Taking a case where you approve something and it has a structural component that has to be built in a certain way or it becomes a problem. The guy who's responsible for that would be the building official. Lets it go with the wrong size beam, okay? That collapses, somebody gets killed. Well, now he's on the hook for it because he did not approve, or he did not follow the approved plans and checking it properly, right? Because he should have caught the fact that that was the wrong size girder.
Well, now, when you say on the hook, what do you mean by that?
He would be sued along with the town.
Well, no. Well,
No?
on the technicality, there's something called the Tort Claims Act, where all state actors typically have immunity from actions taken in their official capacity if they exercise discretion. So New Jersey and all the municipality has the ability to give itself immunity as long as all governmental actors. It can give up that. So the Tort Claims Act gives up some, but in very limited circumstances. And typically in professionals acting on their discretion, so if they go and they inspect it and they didn't see it for some reason, but they appear to inspect it, they're gonna have immunity. So missing things in your professional capacity when you're doing a job in a good faith basis, there's typically immunity, but this is a generalized description on just addressing who's gonna get sued for what.
Yeah, but it ends up in court.
It'll end up in court, absolutely, that, I'll give you that.
It makes lawyers happy.
And then very, very briefly, and when we get into the question of legal discussion, how does one define, good faith? How does one define, taking, what was the word you used, was it precaution or,
In their discretion.
discretion? Yes, discretion.
That's like defining reasonable. It's like defining the word reasonable. We are saddled with that word a lot of times. The courts don't define it, or the legislature doesn't define it. You kind of have to go in your, if this goes to court and a judge instructs a jury, what's reasonable, people use their understanding what would be reasonable. So that's 9 questions down the road.
And don't forget, it's not just the building department, our engineering department has to also check all these things, and then when they sign off, the engineer signs off. This is done to the plans, this is done the right way.
Borough engineer.
Yeah, when he signs his name on that, and that's the issue with the wall, the engineer wouldn't sign the plan, because it wasn't done right. So he wasn't gonna put his name on it. The engineer has to sign off on everything, the engineer's gonna sign off on this building, that we're building. If he feels what we're talking about is wrong, he's not signing it. So, that's just what it is.
Okay, we've,
Beat
I
that
think
one
beat
to
that one, yes. Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may add one more.
go right ahead, John.
Really,
I-
Mr. Keating?
I do believe I brought up in a previous meeting, because it goes back to the CJM building. They made it with their applicant, they put the fire department connection in one of their bedrooms that they've established, and we said, you can't do that. So they said they were gonna modify it, and we were waiting for them to submit the plan to make sure that it was corrected. And I believe at that time, I made a motion to have in our minutes, when one of our applicants that we approved was signed off by the engineer and by the chairman, so we know that a plan was submitted. So then, if anybody wanted to, on their own, want to go to the building department and just say, hey, I understand this plan, can I see the plan, can I make sure that this got done? Because from a safety side, there might be aesthetic things, but from a safety side, I know the fire department connection got put in the right spot, and before it even got built, and it was signed off, I have put like 2 cents in and say, hey, we agreed that this was gonna be moved, why didn't it move? Is there a way, so I'll go back to the beginning, is there a way to add it to our minutes, or our standard, yeah, or standard, like say, right under resolutions, put a title saying, applicant signed, or that
Plan
the
updates or
chairman
something.
signed off on it. So we know what applicant submitted.
Agendas are
Agenda,
not
that's-
defined any place. There's some boards that have municipal council update, that they'll have, updates of other liaisons. So yes, any issues you want to put, there's nothing standard and there's nothing, almost nothing where there's a limitation or prohibition other than legal things. Yes, you can put anything you want on standard things like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that would be
Minutes,
helpful.
You can go back the following minutes, if you don't like what was in the minute, and say, by the way, we talked about this, that's not in the minutes, have them put it in.
Put it in.
You could have
Mhm.
done that, yeah.
Okay.
If they approved it, if you knew they approved it, or they were working on it, and it didn't address that in the minutes at the time, you can say, by the way, we talked about putting this in, and it's not mentioned in the minutes, just so it is on record.
So it is,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right.
yes.
Okay.
I agree. It should
I
be.
think the big thing is that we never know when. Like, an applicant comes, it was approved, and everybody says, hey, did anybody see any movement? It was about a year ago we approved that application. We never know when they submitted.
Correction happens.
So then all of a sudden it would come in and say, oh, Mike signed the applicant from 2 years ago, and then we should check it out to make sure that, whatever we got through. So I was just wondering, like, say, right after
So
resolutions.
speaking of that, I can
put a
give you an
title.
update on the CG. They've been very compliant in the last 2 months. They've responded to the building department almost weekly about what they're doing, what they're trying to do. They've started doing work, they've cleaned out the back, they're gonna pour new cement. They're deciding if they're gonna come back to the boards or not, if they wanna take the building down itself and start from scratch. One of the issues they're having right now, and they put it in writing, is they're having a hard time getting supplies, so they're waiting on supplies, but they have other things they can do while they're waiting to get the supplies. So I think they're up to pouring the foundations right now in the back, so they are working on it.
Taking now they just put brand new steel up. They're gonna leave the steel, or they're gonna take that down to,
So part of the question would be,
yeah, they just put steel up. There's columns and there's a few beams.
so I don't know where it ended off. I know there was conversation about what boards, if they had to come back to the boards, if it was a minor or a major, if they were gonna take down the brick wall and start from scratch. I don't know where it ended up. And if they're putting stuff up, maybe they're gonna leave it. I don't know.
Hopefully they will, I mean, it just,
I don't think they wanted to really go through the whole board thing and the cost again. So they're probably just gonna go with the way they had. But I just wanna let everybody know they are working on it. And that is, by the way, putting on, with a lot of pressure put on them from our administrator and from Sal, basically telling them we're gonna pull the pilot if this doesn't happen, and then all of a sudden they started jumping.
Very good.
Mike, one other thing. Since we don't have any representation on the redevelopment from the board here, can you tell us what's gone on in the redevelopment committee?
It's been quiet, there hasn't been many projects, there's been, the Washington building, which came to you guys, that's finished and done, they're gonna do their thing, it's not a real redevelopment thing. The Smith building is still in process of trying to decide what they wanna do. What Smith building is the, ice cream station in that corner, they've come back numerous times to the redevelopment agency.
They did give the general approval, they are working on that agreement, and it's contingent on where they're gonna put the cars.
For which one now? For Smith or,
Smith.
okay.
Washington's done, Washington doesn't, they're all finished.
Yeah, well, they have to get an agreement signed, but
Right.
they've been approved, like that has been approved. They came back and,
Where the,
Can you mention,
the bakery is,
can you mention what they actually approved though, just so we know?
yeah, it's the same building, that they have. They're going to add a second story, which they have already, but add 2 more apartments on top. They're going to, and the suggestion, I think it was either this board or redevelopment, about keeping the hallways on the entrances into the retail. They initially wanted to go flat across with just
Yeah,
the
it wasn't
door.
here.
And one of the boards, I don't remember which one said.
Yeah,
it
it was
was-
redevelopment.
Redevelopment.
They want to keep the hallways in, so you go into a space before you open the door. They agreed to that. They say they're going to do all the work while the businesses are still in place, so they're not going to shut down any businesses. And they talked about, they are grandfathered in to a business in the basement, which if you go back years ago, there used to be a business in the basement there. They will continue to have a business in the basement there. So that's basically what they're going to have. What's nice about the project is they're redoing the whole building on the outside, so it's going to look brand new. And they brought in the brick, it's going to be a nice white colored brick, that's kind of what's there now. Redo all the bottom parts, and then, reorganize inside how they're going to do it. But we're going to get a nice new looking complex from the corner, from the bank to the corner. So it'll look nice when it's done, I think.
Okay.
the Smith property, I think they have 2 big contingencies. One, they have to go back to, probably 3 contingencies. Go back to the governing body and have some amendments to the plan. One is they need to go up 1 extra story, a little bit of height, I think. And that is height, or having what businesses on the ground floor. Also, they want a pilot. The biggest, ask and what they're gonna need is they would like to have the parking be inside the building, ground or underground level really, but entered in via the pond hole. And the pond hole itself, where they would enter, is not a public road. It's property owned by the municipality. So while people drive around there in a parking lot, tomorrow the borough could decide, we don't want it to be that, they could get close. So they don't have permanent right to get in there. So those people, if that ever happened, they would lose the right to go park the cars, and then everything is screwed up. So they need to go to the governing body, and they have to say, we would like an easement from the governing body to forever access the back, so we could have underground, the parking in that building. And it could be either this route, that route, any way, but they need to get there, but they don't have that right. They have just what everybody else has that could get lost. So they need those 3 things. If they get them, I think there's 51 units is what they're, some commercial on the ground floor, 51 units total. And they're satisfying the total obligation and do that things. That's what that project is.
And then the other 2, just today, I got a call from the county. You should have gotten, maybe they put it in the plans today, for the vet housing. They would like to start as soon as possible, so they did put their
Called.
plans in. Yeah, they got, I understand.
He called, but, I didn't see the permit
So
yet.
I got a call from the administrator that they put their plans in and they'd like to start. The salt dome is supposed to be finished already. They're ready to a couple snags, so that should be done by the end of December. But we had to go find a different place to keep our salt for this month, but that should be done. And then the 61 Q Avenue, which is the old gas station, is ready to go to council and then you guys for approval. It's
We're waiting for
17
signatures.
signatures. It's waiting for signatures.
Yeah,
61
that'll be
Q.
Thursday.
Yeah, that's the old empty gas station across from
Across from the.
Of course, from Starbucks.
across from Starbucks. So they want this between 17 and 22 units. They're working out an arrangement with the county to buy some parking from them. If the county gives them the parking, that, they've got to buy it, then they would get 22 units. If the county says, we're not going to give you the parking, they're going to get 17 units. They're also trying to unofficially get some parking for the Taylor there. The Taylor has that property, but that property came from the beginning with zero parking. But they understand that he needs some parking, so they're going to try to get him 1 or 2 spots for them independently, with working a deal with the county, so they're trying to work that out also. But I think they're close to a final approvals, right? They're just waiting on signature.
Yeah, I just talked to the attorney today.
So
Did
that's,
that county project come with any parking variances? Or do they have enough?
no, they have enough
They have
parking.
enough.
Yeah, they have that.
You mean the Veterans Hall area?
that
that's fine.
whole, because that's where they're trying to get the parking from, I believe, right?
Well, kind of, they're trying to get
Over
it
by
over
the
Trying to
tower.
negotiate.
by the salt dome, that side over there.
Right.
There's some parking that they're building into the salt dome for trucks and other things, and they're trying to get a couple spots there. I think the other thing with that is too, the electric vehicles, there's a certain number of charging stations they have to have. They might be working out a deal with charging stations for both groups to use them, so, because both of them are gonna need them. That's all there is in redevelopment.
I think the testimony we had on the charging stations, they were going to be for the use of that building only. They were not open to the public.
Right, but they might offer to put some in the county parking lot
Oh, okay.
at their cost that the county could use or something. That might be a deal they might want to work
Okay.
out.
I have some dumb questions. There
Nothing's
was, and this might again just be because I'm not as informed in the town. When you mentioned some of these buildings, I accidentally thought it was there's a large part of Wanacue Avenue where they dug into the footings, they
So
took out.
that's called the CGN project.
That's called the CGI. Okay. And
So
what?
That's the one they're in the process of working on right now.
Okay.
What happened is that
Yes,
project
yes.
got approved. The entity that had it, kind of lost financing, and it sat dormant and looked very ugly and bad for a while.
Yeah.
And it took a long time, but it was transferred to somebody else that had the funds to move along with the project. I'm simplifying what happened.
But it still looks ugly and bad.
Yeah.
It's got a few still girders on, but that's what happened. That's why everyone knows the CGM, because it was an ugly eyesore. Essentially, the person became over leveraged and owed money, couldn't get the financing to.
And it was such an attractive building before they tore it down.
Yeah, I will say, I walk, I get coffee on Wanacue Avenue. I like to frequent the restaurants, and I'm walking by, the construction almost every week. And that is a prime piece of property, so I hope that they put something good in, no matter how long it takes to get that done. Okay. And then, I remember you said something about a gas station. I accidentally mistook that. There was an old project across from the ice cream station that I think is since complete, but there's also a gas station that is maybe operating, may not be operating across from there.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Just a mechanic shop.
Okay, is that still operating?
It's not a gas station, it's a mechanic shop.
Okay, got it, because I'm just mixing up landmarks in my head. So that's not there, the gas station is across from the Starbucks.
Correct.
Got it.
Oh, the last thing I'm gonna add just today, they tore down the old hut behind Max. Guys who've been around town long, we'll talk about the Quonset. And we're gonna make a little park there. We finally got our approvals, our environmentals and everything. So that was all torn down, and it'll be just a nice little bench park that we're gonna make over there.
Nice.
Mayor,
Could imagine what ran out of that thing.
I'll be honest, people.
Oh,
Really?
oh.
That was a disaster. What about the,
Is that flood zone now?
There was what?
Flood zone?
Or Parks and Rec.
Well, that's also a big deal too, is the open space. I don't know if you guys heard that one. There's a lot of discussion about the open space funding, all the money we received from the county to do the Joe Grill Complex project that got approved by the open space to bring to the council. The council voted last week to move it forward, an official vote for next week, but it was unanimous vote by the council to approve it. So that's $1.1 million project. It's gonna cost the town roughly $300,000. We need to figure out all the grants and things, and it's moving fields and moving things. And I understand people are not happy because it's in a flood zone, but again, people who've been in town understand all our rec fields are in a flood zone. That's just where they happen to be. It's not, can't change it. So that is actually a big project. That's a big deal.
what about the Civic Center? Any update on that?
Yeah, just today, we got our revised plans. We're waiting for them to put in for permits.
So when they're gonna start that, you think?
As soon as they get the permits, they're telling us they will jump on that and get it done. They tell us it should only take a couple weeks to finish that.
Couple of weeks?
That's what they're saying. Can only go by what they say.
I hope it's worth it in the end.
Well, we have the new building roof, new ceiling, new storage facility up top, new bathrooms, locker room for the women, shower, a lot of new things.
Okay.
So, we have 2 police officers that are women now, so we're building a women's locker room for the police officers in there, with changing facilities, I think a shower, bathrooms, and that'll be for them to use.
Nice. Plus the room for the historical commission.
Yes, we're gonna put things on there, around the walls and stuff, yes.
Okay, John?
Last thing, Mr. Mayor, we received a letter from the MUA a few months back about capacity. And I think they actually gave examples of the Washington Building project, Smith Building, and then kind of capping it out as if these 2 projects go through, is it true that capped out and MUA
No,
is?
not even close. Washington Building is only 8 units, so that, and 6 of them are there already, so that's, probably very zero change on, net zero on that.
Okay.
The other one, if it goes through, the Smith would be about 51, yeah, that would be 51 off their count, and typically probably much better to the numbers. But I think roughly it was 150, the number they're throwing around,
Yes.
subtract the 51, because everything else is included in the plan except the Smith Building right now. So 51 would come off, that would leave 100. And the way I understand it, maybe Tim can explain it better, that 150 is just to keep us in a safe zone. There's
Right.
still wiggle room after that. We don't want to be in the wiggle room, but there is some room in there. But then after that, adjustments are going to have to be made by the MUA and by the builders and all those things.
Mhm.
Tim, he's on the board, so he can talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things they should be looking at is ways of reducing the flow that's already in the system, instead of trying to build a bigger plant. So they should
There's
be,
no room to build a bigger plant.
well, they can make more efficient equipment, but what I'm getting at is,
I mean, we've looked at it, it's
expensive, yeah.
millions of dollars of investment
yeah,
to increase the capacity of the plant, which I can't. speak
what I'm
to.
saying is the reduction of flow in the system is just as effective as a bigger plant. Make sure they're looking at that.
Well, they're always looking at intrusion, infiltration and intrusion, but, again, it's investment, we are investing in that, but, the flow into the plant, we don't have CSO, so we're not taking any street water, so it's just customer use is what we're getting. We have the ionized infiltration and intrusion from groundwater, but that's due to the age in the pipe. And again, that's expensive to start lining the pipes and, what I believe the study said is less than 5% of our flow is I&I, so.
Sounds low, but okay. As long as they're working on it. Anybody else have anything?
I'm sure Mr.
I'd just
Keating's
like to
gonna have
say,
one more comment.
I'd like to thank Rachel for all your time and energy you put into this board. It's been over 20 years, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well over.
Yes. so that's a commitment, so I appreciate that. So-
Thank you. I'm gonna miss everybody.
Best of
I'm
luck.
gonna miss the town. You know, I grew up the road in Haskell, but I always consider Pompton Lakes my home.
Very nice. Okay. Okay.
Okay?
You get the honor.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll second it.
Motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. And we are done.
So you do, it's right to God.
Very good.
January.
In the January.
Looks like I'm gonna close at the last.
Good thing it was a quick meeting.
So you start, I mean, the